actually storm drain maintenance whole covers that just rolls right off the tongue. I've done a lot of design work in my career, but I've never done anything quite like this. These are photos that I've taken around the world, really. And some of them date back to my college days. I've always been fascinated with the decorative quality of maintenance covers. Some of them are manhole covers, but I like the unisex better. In fact, even there's Budapest up there, Istanbul, Barcelona, and some other ones. And the one down at the bottom over here is from Radiator Springs. They even have their own manhole covers. It's pretty cool. So anyway, this all started over coffee, as many things do in this town, with my dear friend Derek Johnson, and I miss Derek. He was our city manager for a while. And I think we were on Garden Street, and we were talking about some of the things that he had seen on a recent trip. And he's kind of like me. He takes pictures of manhole covers. He takes pictures of trash cans and bike lanes and things like that, and doorknobs. And so we kind of relate on that level. We always enjoy comparing notes on trips we've been on. So he said, wouldn't it be fun to have a design for the city of San Luis Obispo that's unique, that somehow brands the city or helps us extend the brand of the city? Now, I'm going to show you a picture right now that many of you will find interesting. This is 1943. This is a brand new train station. Some of those guys are wearing some pretty cool ties if you look closely. What I'm looking at really is the lettering at the top. And that's the original lettering that was on the train station when it was built. And this was when the Spanish-style train stations were kind of working their way up the coast. If you've been to Santa Barbara or San Bernardino or even Los Angeles, a big new train station, that's the kind of iconic architecture that was replacing the more traditional Victorian stations that we had. Well, that typeface is not really a typeface, and that's one of the dilemmas we had. I can't find it. It doesn't exist. It was hand-painted by a sign painter to look Spanish, and it's based on unsealed forms of lettering. Now, unsealed transcriptions, if you go back and look at old transcripts in Greek and in Roman from the 4th century to the 8th century, that's what you see. It was before typography existed. There was no typography. Everything was hand-drawn. So that's where the thing came from. Now, what we did initially, that's the, anyway, that was the typeface we used for branding the city. Back when I was working with Katie's here, back about a dozen years ago, or maybe a little longer, we were working on a new branding program for the city. And so we went back to the train station as our inspiration for that. And this was the first solution that we came up with. It was a sort of a no-brainer. We're just going to put the logo on, as in Barcelona did, or Istanbul. They just put the logo on the manhole covers. So that was the first submittal. That's our first thought, working with Derek, but he handed this off to a fellow named Chris Lehman, who was the utilities director for the city. So they're in charge of the stuff you see around that deals with storm drains and whatnot. So Chris and I sat down and talked about it, and then we thought, well, maybe we should do some messaging with this. Instead of just having the city's logo, let's think about what we can do to make a statement about our concern for the environment. So we started working on some ideas, and I think I have a sketch here. Very sophisticated, as you can see. This is the first sketch I did of, well, we've got steelhead trout, and we actually do have steelhead trout in our creeks. Some, not always, but occasionally you do see them. And so we had to work, of course, with a circle. That was important. But the steelhead, everybody agrees to, it was a pretty good idea. As you can see, we were messing around with the verbiage. We didn't know what we were going to say exactly. But that was where we started. And in order to get those additional words, with the next slide, we have some working on lettering. This is really how I work. I draw. And then I have staff that helps me refine everything. But basically, everything starts as drawing. So those are inventing the letters that we're missing from what we have for San Luis Obispo. We have to invent the other letters. So every time we do a new piece of the city that requires this typeface, or we're turning it into typeface, we had to draw the letters from scratch, using pieces of the other letters so that it has a homogeneity to it. So that's a design problem. Okay, then we started working on the graphic. The graphic, everybody liked the steelhead. This is still a pencil sketch now. It's on a piece of tissue paper. And so the idea of the fish in the creek with San Luis Mountain, or San Luis behind it, was something we all agreed on. What we had problems with was what kind of trees are those? So we got into a big debate about the trees. And so I said, pine trees or the palm trees, or are we doing sycamores, oak trees, what do we want to do? And so there was a lot of discussion around the city, particularly the utilities department, but around the city about what would be an appropriate solution. So the next thing we did was we started showing, well, here's background alternatives. So then we went through a lot of different kinds of, mostly just the trees are changing here. And the other thing I want to point out is that you're dealing with only two levels. There's a recess and there's a concave and a convex. So there's a raised level and a sunken level. And what happens as these middle elements, as they age, the lower levels start to become the dark levels. So, because that's what fills with dirt. And the top levels, because they get braided, occasionally become the light levels. So you're always thinking about that as you're doing your design work. And the other thing you've got to think about is the distribution of positives and negatives. You don't want to have big flat areas because then that's too slippery. So a car driving over might slip, or a person on the sidewalk might slip. So you have to think about those things as you go. It's not rocket science, but it is something you can be concerned about. Okay, then we went to the final design. We finally all agreed on oak trees. Oak trees were kind of cool. And although there are less sycamores in the tree, I went up and down San Luis Obispo and took pictures of all the trees, of course. And so anyway, they don't seem like everybody's favorite, and they are prevalent, they're everywhere. And then finally, here's final design. This one is mostly sidewalks. Now you'll notice that if they're in a sidewalk and adjacent to that maintenance cover, there's usually a storm drain, something either in the gutter or someplace adjacent to it. And that's what these lids are required to be able to clean out something big that's in there. So there's usually anything small, like even like a soda can or anything, will usually find its way down into the creek. They all drain in the creek and find its way out to Apple Beach and the ocean. So it's important to be able to clean these things out. And many of you have seen the big, I call it the sucker truck, the big hose that goes in and sucks up all the junk in the manholes. They do that occasionally. Now there's two systems. There's a storm drain system and there's a sewer system. This is for storm drains. This doesn't deal with sanitary sewer. Sewer, when you flush your toilet or take a shower, all of that goes to the treatment plant and it's treated and then released into the creek as clean water. This just goes directly into the creeks. So that's my story.